Wendy Williams, fearless, witty, and never afraid to speak her mind, took a daytime talk show and turned it into an American ritual. Long before the wigs, the catchphrase, "How you doin'?" of and the roar of her studio audience, she was simply a voice in small radio rooms. She believed that if she spoke with honesty, people would listen. And they did. For decades, millions of viewers tuned in every afternoon, not only for celebrity gossip, but for the strange comfort of a woman who said out loud what everyone else only dared to whisper. But behind the sparkle of her set and the boldness of her on-screen persona, Wendy's real life was marked by deep grief, betrayal, devastating illness, and losses that might have crushed anyone else. Now at 61, she continues to fight storms that few can imagine, and she's done it all in the open, refusing to hide from the world. If Wendy once kept you company on a lonely afternoon, send a little love her way. She has more than earned it. Wendy Joan Williams was born on July 18, 1964, in Asbury Park, New Jersey. She was the middle child of Thomas and Shirley Williams, both respected educators. From the outside, their family looked picture-perfect, stable, disciplined, and achievement-driven. But inside, Wendy often felt like she was under a microscope, constantly measured and judged. When racial unrest shook Asbury Park in 1970, the family moved to nearby Ocean Township. It may have been safer, but for young Wendy, it meant being one of the only black students in her class. The loneliness of those years never left her. At home, food became her battlefield. By age 12, she was subjected to weekly weigh-ins and constant monitoring of what she ate. "I was just a kid, but they were already watching every bite I took," she later recalled. At school, teachers labeled her hyperactive, and doctors put her on medication that dulled her energy. The message was always the same: too big, too loud, too much. The sting of those early judgments would scar her deeply, but they also hardened her for the battles ahead. In 1986, fresh from Northeastern University, Wendy landed her first radio job in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. To outsiders, it sounded like paradise, but for Wendy, it was a lonely exile. The pay was poor, the hours endless, and the isolation unbearable. Within months, she quit, broke, exhausted, and doubting her future. Back on the mainland, she stuffed demo tapes into envelopes and mailed them everywhere she could. Rejections piled up. Calls never came. "For a long time, I thought nobody wanted me. Nobody wanted my voice," she admitted. But she persisted. Finally, in 1989, opportunity arrived. She worked in Washington, D.C. and then Philadelphia. She was only 22. At Power 99 in Philadelphia, she started to stand out. While other DJs kept their chatter safe, Wendy made gossip a show-stopping headline. She was raw, fearless, and already developing the segment that would later define her career: Hot Topics. By 1994, she had made it to WBLS in New York, the radio pinnacle. There, she did something revolutionary. She mixed the day's news with stories from her own life. She spoke candidly about her struggles with substances and the heartbreak of miscarriages. Listeners didn't just hear a radio personality. They heard a real person. Every broadcast felt like walking a tightrope. But her honesty made people lean in closer. In 2008, at 44, Wendy took the leap to television with The Wendy Williams Show. And from the very first episode, audiences knew this wasn't the usual safe, polished daytime TV. Wendy was direct, hilarious, and disarmingly open. Her phrase, "How you doin'?" became a nationwide catchphrase. For 13 seasons, she dominated a space that very few, especially black women, had ever conquered. She earned Emmy nominations, magazine covers, and a fiercely loyal fan base. But the honesty that fueled her rise also made her a lightning rod. Social media dissected every word, tabloids stalked her every move, and critics pounced on every slip. Yet day after day, 5 shows a week, nearly an hour each time, she kept showing up. Behind the wigs and laughter was a woman battling fatigue, stress, and the crushing pressure of keeping her empire alive. Wendy married Bertrand Bert Girigori in 1994 when she was 30. But the marriage was short-lived. She was still fighting a cocaine dependency, and by 1995, it had collapsed. No children, just the ache of a failed dream. Not long after, she met Kevin Hunter. Their connection was strong, and in November 1999, at 35, they married. Together they faced heartbreak after heartbreak, with multiple miscarriages. But in 2000 came the miracle she longed for, the birth of her son, Kevin Hunter Jr. "He's my saving grace," Wendy said with tears in her eyes. For a time, their family looked unshakable. They even launched the Hunter Foundation to help families struggling with addiction. But the cracks widened. Kevin's infidelity became public and devastating. Since he was also her manager and partner in business, the betrayal shattered her personally and professionally. In 2019, after 20 years of marriage, Wendy filed for divorce. By 2020, it was finalized. She kept her show and her name, but the cost was staggering. The hardest part was knowing her son had witnessed the family fall apart. Just as she was rebuilding, life struck again. In 2020, her beloved mother, Shirley Williams, passed away. Shirley had been her anchor, her steadying hand. "It was like the bottom dropped out of my life," Wendy admitted. She went back to the stage, but something had dimmed. Sometimes, even the strongest performers are just daughters missing their moms. In 2017, viewers watched in horror as Wendy, dressed as the Statue of Liberty on Halloween, collapsed live on air. She recovered within minutes, but it was no gimmick. It was a warning. Behind the scenes, she was fighting Graves' disease and thyroid issues. Fatigue, swelling, trembling hands, each day was a struggle. In May 2020, she had a health crisis at home that required multiple blood transfusions. Then came lymphedema, painful swelling in her legs. The woman, once known for striding in stilettos, now faced daily compression wraps and 45-minute machine sessions just to keep her circulation going. "I can't wear heels the way I used to," she confessed. By 2021, guest hosts often filled her seat. And in June 2022, The Wendy Williams Show aired its final episode. The credits rolled without Wendy there to say goodbye, a silent but heartbreaking ending to a 13-year run. Later in 2022, a New York court placed her under financial guardianship, declaring she could no longer manage her own affairs. For someone who built her life on independence and boldness, it was a crushing blow. Once worth around $40 million, reports now estimate her fortune at between $0.5 million and $1 million. The mansions and apartments she once owned have been sold off. The Livingston, New Jersey estate is gone. The Miami escape is gone. Her Manhattan home, rebuilt after a 2012 fire, is no longer fully her own to manage. What remains are the treasures she personally cherished, over 300 wigs, shelves of Birkin and Chanel handbags, and memories of shoes she can no longer wear. In 2024 came the cruelest revelation. Wendy was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia, PPA, and frontotemporal dementia, FTD. For a woman who built her empire on words, PPA, which slowly steals language, was devastating irony. And FTD, which alters judgment and behavior, was another merciless blow. The host who once leaned forward with fire and asked, "How you doing?" now sometimes struggled to finish her own sentences, but in true Wendy fashion, she chose to share her diagnosis publicly. Once again she refused to hide, turning even her silence into an act of honesty. Even as her world grows smaller, her legacy looms large. Wendy remains one of the very few black women to dominate American daytime talk. For 13 seasons, she redefined what it meant to be candid, fearless, and unapologetic. She transformed gossip into ritual and confession into connection. Her greatest treasure isn't her wigs, her show, or her handbags. It's her son, Kevin Jr., born in 2000 after years of heartbreak. For him, she's not a media icon. She's simply Mom, and maybe that's the truest lesson of Wendy Williams. That honesty can build an empire, but it costs energy, privacy, and peace. That fame can amplify love and magnify betrayal. That money can solve plenty, but not everything. And that true strength is often just showing up one more day, even when the heels have to stay in the closet. If Wendy ever made you laugh, think, or feel less alone, send her a heart or a simple, "How you doing?" She lived loudly, loved fiercely, and told the truth even when it hurt. That echo doesn't fade.